Roy Williams is a marketing man. His clients want to buy whatever advertising sells the most product.
It's Rick Dees in the morning. All communication should be poetic. Bring him in, please. Roy Williams!
Essential to any company is the ability to get your message out. My guest says, don't give up hope. Joining me now is Roy Williams.
Yes, so how do you speak in poetry to people and get them to do things you want them to do?
Here to talk about the advantages of radio advertising is the author of a new book called The Wizard of Ads.
Joining me is Roy Williams. Today we're talking about his book, Secret Formulas of the Wizard of Ads. This is one of the most important books that anybody can read.
What makes people do the things they do? More importantly, how can we get people to do what we want them to do? With another part of the answer to that question, here's the Wizard of Ads, Roy H. Williams.
We're going to begin with the philosophy of writing. You see, there is a pivotal question, and you'll notice on my business card, that oversized bronze coin. On one side of that is that symbol, and it looks like a star, except it's really what you'll find on the face of a compass: north, south, east, west, northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest. Now that's a very important symbol in my firm, because the question that we think is the most important question that can possibly be asked to a business owner, and oddly enough, even to an individual, about their private life, is this: how will you measure success? Until a person can tell you at what moment they're going to pop the cork on the champagne bottle and dance in the street, until they can tell you when they're going to do that, neither you nor they is qualified to design an ad strategy. In Alice in Wonderland, it was the White Rabbit, I believe, who said, when you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And if you don't know what you're going to measure or how you're going to measure it, how can you possibly hope to accomplish anything? As a matter of fact, the pivotal question and the reason for the symbol from the face of the compass throughout our company is this: what will success look like when it is achieved? Precisely what are you trying to accomplish? Which way is north? The North Star is the only star in the sky that does not move. Mariners have traveled the world by the stars, specifically one star, the North Star. Why that one? Because it doesn't move. Did you know that in the sky, every star moves throughout the night in an arc circling the North Star? If you take time-lapse photography pointed at the North Star and you let the shutter stay open all night, you would see that every star in the sky sweeps in an arc around the North Star. It's because of the tilt of the Earth, the rotation of the Earth, blah, 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 blah. The turning of the Earth. But the North Star is the one star in the sky whose position does not change. It's an ideal, if you will. It's representative of something that you set out to accomplish, and all your actions will be guided by that. It is the non-negotiable standard of your company. This is who we are, this is what we believe, this is what we will never compromise. And this is what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve that North Star. Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic, measuring his progress, changing the pitch and direction of his sails, and turning the wheel of his ship by using the North Star as a reference point. Why? Because it wasn't ever subject to change. It was a non-negotiable. Now, had Christopher Columbus, like most business owners, chosen to make decisions according to the changing circumstances, momentary changing things, such as the waves, if he would have looked at the horizon and had watched the waves and tried to figure out what to do based upon the way the waves were moving. Well, wait a minute, the waves blow this way sometimes and that way sometimes and this way sometimes, depending on the wind. No, 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 no. Too smart to be a business owner, Christopher Columbus said, no, the North Star. That's how I'm going to navigate. I'm going to navigate by the star that does not walk around. That's what the American Indians called it, believe it or not. Columbus got here and found out, yes, the American Indian had already figured out there's one star that did not move. There was an Indian name for it, but translated it meant the star that does not walk around. If you have a client who is an advertiser and they have a goal that walks around, and you're supposed to help them hit a moving target, my advice is run like hell. You're never going to get there. You're never going to help them achieve their goal because they don't have a goal, and they have not defined how they will measure success. Now, how many people can name this sculpture? The sculpture is called The Thinker. Can somebody tell me who sculpted The Thinker? Auguste Rodin. Thank you very much. Highly educated group. I'm here to tell you that words, not visual images, are the most powerful force there has ever been. I don't mean to preach at you, but if you will not believe the testimony of the neurologists and the psychologists of the world for the past 125 years, if you will not accept the medical evidence, maybe you should just turn to the first chapter of Genesis, where you'll find in verse 3, and God said, and a whole universe sprang into existence. And he kept saying things for 6 days, and on the 6th day he said, let us make man in our own image. Hold it. Let us make man in our own image. Let's make him a miniature of us, but not quite as powerful. What does that say about the power of our words? Words, my friends, are in fact the most powerful force that has ever existed. I believe that the universe exists because of the power of what God spoke into reality. Bam! And there it was. Now, words are electric. They carry an energy, and they should be chosen according to their emotional voltage. If a word does not shock a little, you can be sure the hearer is not jolted or moved. In my first book, The Wizard of Ads, the very first chapter, The 9 Secret Words, the risk of insult is the price of clarity. Do you have the courage to speak clearly? Now, what makes my thinker think is that he thinks not only with the brain, but with his knitted brow, his distended nostrils and compressed lips, with every muscle of his arms, back, and legs, with his clenched fist and gripping toes. That is what Auguste Rodin said about the thinker. Seeing it now with our ears, we find Rodin's thinker far more interesting than when we saw it only with our eyes. Words are the most powerful drug used by mankind, is what Rudyard Kipling said. The average writer, unfortunately, will position the reader, listener, or viewer as an uninvolved bystander. They will talk at someone. Wah, wah, wah. A good writer, however, positions the reader as an interested observer. They talk to someone. But great writers involve the reader, listener, or viewer as an active participant in what they write. The customer becomes a participant in the story. They see themselves in what you say. Every ad is a story about someone or something. Who or what will be the subject of your story? Will the ad be about the product, the store, the owner, or the customer? You see, the best ads are always about the customer. You are standing in the snow, 5 1/2 miles above sea level, gazing at a horizon hundreds of miles away. It occurs to you that life here is very simple. You live or you die. No compromises, no whining, no second chances. This is a place constantly ravaged by wind and storm, where every ragged breath is an accomplishment. You stand on the uppermost pinnacle of the earth. This is the mountain they call Everest. Yesterday it was considered unbeatable, but that was yesterday. As Edmund Hillary surveyed the horizon from the peak of Mount Everest, he monitored the time on a wristwatch which had been specifically designed to withstand the fury of the world's most angry mountain. Rolex believed Sir Edmund would conquer the mountain, and especially for him they created the Rolex Explorer. In every life there is a Mount Everest to be conquered. When you have conquered yours, you'll find your Rolex waiting patiently for you to come and pick it up at Justice Jewelers. I'm Woody Justice, and I've got a Rolex for you. Now, that 60-second radio ad was far more interesting and vastly more effective than most ads for Rolex. Why? Because it wasn't about the damn watch, that's why. You see, there is no intellectual justification for spending $15,000 for a watch. There's no reason to spend that kind of money to know what time it is. I can find out what time it is for free. What time is it? Now listen. When the heart and the mind will follow, I've been telling you this over and over again, the ad was a better than average ad because it was about the customer. It was about the kind of person that would wear such a watch and why they would wear it and what it would mean. In every life, there's a Mount Everest to be conquered. When you have conquered yours, you'll find your Rolex. You will find your Rolex waiting patiently for you to come and pick it up. And then we tell you where, and then the man who has it assures you that, yes, in fact, he has one for you. The name of his company appeared one time in the ad. No street address, no phone number, and it sold a record number of Rolex watches. We broke every rule of advertising. We did not say Rolex 7 times. We did not say, it takes the world's finest craftsman a full year to make a Rolex. Because I'm convinced there's a lot of people that are not impressed by that. They're thinking, you need to get you a little faster craftsman, boys. Now, the reason that most ads are badly written is because there are only 2 schools of writing in America, the school of journalism and the school of creative writing. Worthy schools, marvelous schools, but largely ineffective to help persuade. Here's why. Journalism is simply an objective presentation of the facts in an attempt to inform, not to persuade. Every good journalism instructor will tell you your goal is not to try to lean one way or the other or persuade somebody to your perspective, but to simply present the facts objectively and let the reader, listener, or viewer come to their own conclusions. Well, that's great. And that's why we have so many ads in America today that inform us. They're very informative, but they're not persuasive. We now know a whole lot more about something we're still not going to do. Now, the other school, obviously, is creative writing. Now, the goal of a creative writer is to entertain. And there's an assumption made by every creative writer. They assume that the reader, listener, or viewer will stay with them through the early, tedious scenes and chapters, knowing that after a while there is a payoff coming in the form of entertainment. The novelist, the screenwriter, whoever it is that's a creative writer, yes, they have a clever command of the language, and they will, in fact, enthrall you if you give them the time. Why will you give them the time? Because you're paying for this entertainment. Does the ad writer have the committed attention of the reader, listener, and viewer? Absolutely not. The ad writer cannot settle for merely informing the customer or merely entertaining the customer. Wouldn't you agree that most of the ads in America today are wonderfully entertaining and or incredibly informative? Very few are persuasive. But there is a school of writing that has fallen into disrepute and almost become invisible in America. And it is the only form of writing whose goal and stated purpose was, in fact, to persuade. And to do so in a very brief, tight, compact economy of words. And that is the school of the poet. You see, poetry is to communicate an entirely new perspective in a brief, tight economy of words. The goal of the poet is to persuade, to cause you to see the world through their eyes, to cause you to have their opinion, to bring you to an entirely different state of mind. If you will be a great ad writer, you will not necessarily study poetry. You certainly won't dissect it. You certainly won't write ads that rhyme. That would just be contrived and stupid. But you will spend 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes a day. Get some books of poetry and leave them laying around the house. Read a poem before you go to bed at night. Leave another book in the bathroom. You know why? Because if you'll spend those few minutes every day, 7 days a week, from now on, sometimes you'll like the poem, sometimes you'll hate it. You'll have favorites that you'll read again and again and again, things that after a period of time, because you've heard them so often in your mind as you were reading silently, you will be able to quote them. You'll be able to remember the melody, and you'll be able to say, The people along the sand all turn and look one way. They turn their backs on the land and look at the sea all day. As long as it takes to pass, a ship keeps raising its hull. The wetter ground, like glass, reflects a standing gull. The land may vary more, but wherever the truth may be, the water comes ashore, and the people look at the sea. They cannot look out far. They cannot look in deep. But when was that ever a bar to any watch they keep? Robert Frost. Never intended to memorize that. I just like it. Read it lots of times. You can probably do it, or nearly do. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He'll not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. You can do it, can't you? My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. These pools that, though in forest, still reflect the total sky almost without defect, like the flowers beside them, chill and shiver, and like the flowers beside them will soon be gone, yet not out by any brook or river, but up by roots to bring dark foliage on. The trees that have it in their pent-up buds to darken nature and be summer woods, let them think twice before they use their powers to blot out and drink up and sweep away these flowery waters and these watery flowers from snow that melted only yesterday. Just absorb it through your skin. Take it in, read it, lay the book down, and I'll tell you what it will do. It will change your ability to communicate in a colorful language that surprises Broca, that startles the mind. The twist of a phrase, the manipulation of a concept, the use of an unusual combination of words in an unpredictable way. That is what makes the poet different. He doesn't say what's been said before, and if he does, he says it in a way that it's never been said before. Let's look specifically at a 100-year-old poem by Edwin Arlington Robinson. The goal here is, in your ads, use unpredictable words in unusual combinations. Your goal is to surprise Broca's area of the brain, and through Broca's area, cause the reader to, or the listener to, see themselves someplace between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year, to be there in the visual spatial sketchpad of their imagination. Now, don't satisfy the expectations of the schema. The schema is the accepted, predicted worldview. It's the template through which your life experience is colored. Your schema is, in fact, the sum total of your experiences, prejudices, and superstitions. As a matter of fact, your schema dictates that if I play the first 7 notes of the musical scale, your schema will be screaming for that 8th note, because it always comes after the first 7. And if I fail to play it, Broca is satisfied and I have your attention. Don't ever do what the listener was expecting you to do. Now, whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from sole to crown, clean-favored and imperially slim. He was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked. But still he fluttered pulses when he said, "Good morning," and he glittered when he walked. And he was rich, yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In short, he was everything to make us wish we were in his place. So on we worked and waited for the light, went without the meat, and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. Ooh, that's ugly. 60 seconds, and man, I wish you hadn't read that. I'm feeling totally different than I was 60 seconds ago. My mind is filled with things like, yes, you can't judge a book by its cover. He looked happy, and yes, money can't buy happiness. Certainly Edwin Arlington Robinson in his story. By the way, do you remember about 1962, Simon and Garfunkel made that into a song? They didn't write it. It was 3/4 of a century old before Paul Simon was ever born. Robinson surprises Broca with his ending of Richard Cory, but that's not the magic of the poem, you see. It's his skillful use of unpredictable words in unusual combinations. It's that brings electricity to his writing. Let's look specifically at what he did and how it's different from what we would normally do. Whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from sole to crown, not from the bottom of his head to the bottom of his feet to the top of his head, from the tops of his head to the bottom of his feet. That's what people say all the time. No, 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 no. From sole to crown. Now, why did he use crown as a reference to the top of the head? It is a description of the crown of the head, the top of the head, but it also has an associative meaning, royalty. Thank you, Garrett. Royalty. It has the aristocracy of a regal bearing. One word, crown, with two meanings. Clean-favored and imperially slim. Wow. Two words, imperially slim. And if you put it in your computer, your spell check will kick out the word imperially. It's not even a word. Imperially. Nope. But that combination, imperially slim, no one's ever said imperially slim before, but it reinforced that crown message just a few words earlier. It gave you a rich texture of an aristocrat, of a man who had everything to be proud of. And he was always quietly arrayed. To say that a man dressed quietly. You know exactly what he's talking about, but you've never heard that phrase before. And he was always human when he talked, but still he made hearts skip a beat. Oh no, it wasn't from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head, and he didn't make hearts skip a beat. He fluttered pulses when he said, "Good morning," and he glittered when he walked. Now, do you have the guts to say something that abstract and that absurd? Will you say, "And he glittered when he walked"? Because if you will, you can win the hearts and minds of the world. You can do what Jim Michener did. You can do what he instructed Bill Lederer to do. Don't try to win people with the facts. Facts come up against the screen of the intellect, and the mind says, do I accept this? Do I not accept this? Do I agree with this? Do I not agree with this? But when you present something that is obviously fiction, and he glittered when he walked, passes right past that intellectual filter, and people embrace the magic of it. Why? Because you're not even pretending that it's real. In my new book, Secret Formulas of the Wizard of Ads, I describe a seminar like this one, where I did an experiment. It was a bunch of professional writers. And I spoke to them at a luncheon, and it was mostly women. And I said, this is my new book. And I held up a copy of The Wizard of Ads. And I said, it'll make you rich, it'll make you thin. It'll make you rich, it'll make you thin. Buy the book. You'll be rich and thin. Buy this book. And they all started laughing. So I started doing a little more Elvis stuff. And then I said, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll kiss $17 goodbye. Come on, help me. I'll laugh, I'll cry, kiss $17 goodbye. Help me. I'll laugh, I'll cry, I'll kiss $17 goodbye. And I was testing a theory. If a person heard themselves say that they were going to do something that they weren't even planning to do, they're imagining it over and over, and it brings them more likely to do it. I wanted to make claims about the book they knew could not possibly be true, but that would create an attractive and a pleasing mental image in the mind. They associated this pleasing mental image of being rich and thin. And few of these women were either rich or thin. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just something that I knew that would appeal to each of them. And then I said, I'll laugh, I'll cry, I'll kiss $17 goodbye. And they all did that. Of course, I sold a record number of books when that was over. Why? Because I spoke reality? No, because I spoke to the taste of meat in the heart of the dog. Talk to the customer in the language of the customer about what's important to the customer. They knew there was no possible way that he glittered when he walked, or that the book would make them rich and thin. But that's the beauty of being an ad writer. You're not a news reporter. You're not bound by the confines of journalism. You're trying to uncover the magic and communicate the magic. Ah. And he was rich, yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In short, we thought that he was everything to make us wish we were in his place. So on we worked and waited for the light, went without the meat and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. Bam! Less than 60 seconds, the thing is loaded with unusual words and unpredictable combinations. That is the magic of a poet. To communicate an entirely new perspective in a very brief, tight economy of words, it's the magic of the ad writer. Do yourself a favor, do your clients a favor, buy some books of poetry, leave them laying around the house, invest 2 stinking lousy minutes a day to read a poem. It will dramatically, over time, if you have the patience of the farmer, over time, it will begin to season and color and flavor your ability to describe things. Could you accept that? Will you believe that? And that is advanced copywriting, the philosophy of writing.